I don't think you're probably born that way.
I think that it's not really a choice. I think there is a biological component to their sexuality.
I believe I was born gay, and I believe that anyone who even struggled with the idea that they might be gay, I believe they were just in the process of coming to terms with their inborn homosexuality.
Well, I believe that homosexuality is not something that you're born with. It's a choice that you make.
No, I don't believe so. I think they're born one way and stay that way. I mean, if you're homosexual, you're homosexual. I don't think that you can change that one way or the other.
I think if you're born that way, I don't think you can make a heterosexual gay, so I don't think you can make a homosexual straight.
They just might have these feelings ever since they were little kids. You know, who's really to say? I'm not an expert on it. I'm not a doctor. That's just my opinion.
To limit your choices to a gay identity, it's what will certainly, keep you from finding other sides of yourself. I discovered that I had heterosexual feelings. Sounds kind of shocking from somebody who was so devout in their beliefs of homosexuality being such a true part of them. Can I tell you how I discovered my heterosexuality?
Is sexual preference a matter of inheritance? Are we born to become gay or straight? Or does our environment play a role in shaping our sexual feelings? These questions cut to the core of human experience. Many mental health organizations say that sexual orientation is an inborn trait, like height or eye color, and therefore unlikely to change. However, a growing number of counselors and researchers are listening to people who say they have changed and are now rethinking the causes of sexual orientation.
My take on it is that it's a combination of both nature and nurture that contributes to sexual orientation. Certainly, throughout the 1990s and even into this century, we've seen a push to establish a biological basis for sexual orientation. And in a sense, by doing that, we've neglected any of the environment and those kinds of factors in contributing to sexual orientation.
The idea that homosexuality is hardwired via one's genetic makeup is one of the more popular misconceptions about homosexuality. Let me quote from the American Psychiatric Association's fact sheet on sexual orientation. Some people believe that sexual orientation is innate and fixed. However, sexual orientation develops across a person's lifetime. To date, there are no replicated scientific studies supporting any specific biological etiology, meaning cause, for homosexuality. Similarly, no specific psychosocial or life circumstances or family dynamic cause for homosexuality has been identified. Thus, the cause of homosexuality is something of scientific mystery. However, the conventional wisdom that people are born gay is just not consistent with the research we have. What is more likely the case is that homosexual attractions are caused by different factors for different people. We have known for a long time that sexual feelings and behavior are highly responsive to environmental circumstances. Given the incredible variability of sexual customs and expressions the world over, it seems very likely that the object of one's sexual attractions are quite responsive to one's upbringing, one's sexual education and experience, one's values and beliefs, and the culture one grows up in.
A very significant change was understanding the factors or the environmental factors that did shape me, that are significant to why I made the choices I did.
Well, in this book, following that, they started describing, and it's funny because there was chapters about heterosexuality, and then there was like a small paragraph following that, and that paragraph said, once in a while there's someone who doesn't have that feeling of being attracted to the opposite sex, but instead has a feeling of being attracted to the same sex, and that's known as homosexuality. that was in the book. That was the first time, and I can remember it just like it just happened, yesterday, seeing that word and thinking that that was me. It was kind of by process of elimination. You don't fit in here. You don't fit in here. You must fit in here. This must be it. And then the book ends. And it's not like there were any other options in the book. I couldn't turn to another chapter and say, oh, there's another option. No, 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 no. You choose within the options given you, and here they are.
If sexual attractions are not genetically determined, then how do they develop? According to psychologist Mark Yarhouse of Regent University, there are events that often go along with the development of same-sex feelings.
And typically, that begins with early awareness, around age 10 or so, of feeling different than other people, of a sense of confusion about that, or it's a dilemma. Here I am experiencing same-sex attractions in a society that is predominantly heterosexual. And then they go into an experience of same-sex behavior early on. Tends to be around age 13 or so on average. And then into an experience of labeling that behavior and that sense of confusion as an identity privately to themselves. I must be gay, or I must be lesbian. And then the next stage would be, or milestone event, would be disclosure to someone else. And typically that happens within one's peer group, finding a safe group of others to disclose one's experiences of attraction, and then perhaps to one's siblings, and eventually to one's parents.
But I was definitely different from my peers. I was very opposite of that as a child. I was very hyper, very loud, very into sports, loved being outside, played with action figures, didn't fit in the stereotype. And I knew that at a young age as well, that I was different from the other girls. But I knew the feelings I had were different from my other friends that I had that were females. It wasn't until the age 7, though, that I began a fantasy life of kind of entertaining those crushes that I had on women. And it was more fantasizing, wanting attention and the maternal care that women gave. I was very drawn to that. And I think age 10 is when I began sexualizing them. And as soon as I did that, I realized what I was doing and realized that those were homosexual fantasies and crushes I had since I was little. And I felt very overwhelmed by that, but also very trapped.
I remember asking Dad, he was about ready to throw one of his fits, which he would always go into fits of rage. I remember asking him, I said, you hate me, don't you? And he came back, he said, yes, taking the Lord's name in vain, I hate you, and laughed. And that wasn't necessarily a kick. It was like, yeah, I knew that. I already knew that. So I grew up, having thought that already, and then at age 10, I was introduced to sex by a boy across the street. And even though I knew it was wrong, but at the same time, it was good to have positive male affection. Somebody wanted me for me.
And the ones that were really popular were the, football team, basketball team, and they just had these strengths that they were other to me. They were different. And so I developed this curiosity, and I thought, wow, what's all that about? And the more I thought about it, the more different I felt. And when puberty came along and bodies started changing, I really noticed other men. I wasn't very athletic, and so I was a little overweight. And the male body just looked very different to me. It looked different from mine. I didn't feel like I owned the same thing that I saw in other men. The way I discovered homosexuality was I went to the public library. My parents were very conservative, so they never told me anything about sex. I never even had the talk. Like the talk, we never had it at all. And I found a book, and I remember opening the book, and this book, this was way back when, I don't know, it was like a 70s book, had pictures of men and women naked. And instead of being attracted to or curious about the page that had the women, I looked at the men. That whole feeling of otherness and difference just really stood out when I looked at these pictures of men. And just right then, my curiosity crossed over from being a curiosity about, the strengths that I saw in these guys who were on the football team and the basketball team, to being a curiosity about the male body. And that really, actually that began an involvement with pornography right from that point. But also what it did is it affirmed in me this desire for the masculine and to connect with men. And so in my mind began this idea that I could connect with men sexually, even though I really couldn't connect with them socially very well. I didn't have those skills. So my gay story started then. It started in high school when I was a young man who was very much different from other young men